Welcome back, students. We are running the chapter number 1, reproduction in organism, and now we are continuing with the topic events in reproduction, particularly in sexual reproduction. We are discussing the events in sexual reproduction. We have already finished first two part of this events in sexual reproduction. So what are the basic events of sexual reproduction? As you already know that there are three events in sexual reproduction. Whatever the living organism might be, whatever the complexity they might be, or the type of sexual organism might they have, but all the living organism who reproduces sexually, they have this basic events which occur similarly in all types of organism. The first event is called as pre-fertilization. Second one is called as fertilization. And third one is called as post-fertilization. I will divide the processes. The pre-fertilization includes two. First is called as gametogenesis. Second one is gamete transfer. Fertilization, that means it's a syngamy process or fusion process. And the post-fertilization events, that includes zygote formation and embryogenesis. So these are the events, basic events in the sexual reproduction. We have finished with first event, pre-fertilization. Both the events have been finished. Gametogenesis, a process of gamete transfer, a process of gamete formation, and the second one is gamete transfer. Both the processes of pre-fertilization have been finished. Even we have also finished with a fertilization, that means a syngamy process. External and internal type of a fertilization have been finished. Now today we have to discuss this and the last events in a sexual reproduction, and that is the last part of this chapter. And today we are going to finish all this chapter number 1, the basics of reproduction in organism. Okay, so this is a post-fertilization event. So shall we start with the post-fertilization event? Yes. Okay, so now focus on post-fertilization events. So these are the post-fertilization events. So what is a post-fertilization events? The post-fertilization events, the name itself suggests post means after. So the events of sexual reproduction which occurs after fertilization, they all events are considered as post-fertilization. In short, whatever the events occurs after fertilization, they are considered as post-fertilization events. This post-fertilization events, that includes two types. First is formation of zygote, and the second one is called as embryogenesis. Clear, students? So which are the two events of post-fertilization? First, zygote formation, and the second one is embryogenesis. Let's discuss the first one, zygote formation. This is one of the events of post-fertilization. See, you already know that there is a fusion in the fertilization, or there is a syngamy in the fertilization. Fusion between what? Gametes. Male gamete and the female gamete. They fuse together and that leads to a formation of a zygote. The male gamete is a haploid, the female gamete is a haploid, and that leads to a formation of a zygote. This is called as zygote formation process. Clear? But here you know that where the fertilization takes place, there are two varieties of organism. One variety of organism in which the fertilization occurs externally, the other variety of organism in which the fertilization occurs internally. So here the zygote formation that occurs in some organism the zygote formation occurs outside body. This zygote which is formed, that occurs outside a body. Whereas there are certain examples of organisms in which the zygote formation occurs inside the body, specifically inside the body of a female parent, because the fusion occurs in the female parent, okay, in the body of a female parent. So where there is a formation of a zygote outside the body, this is the cases where external fertilization takes place. And where there is a formation of zygote inside the body, these are the organisms where internal fertilization takes place. Clear? So those organisms which shows or which exhibit external fertilization, like for an example, those specifically living in water, algae, fishes, amphibians, these are the organisms. Like amphibians, like frog, these are the organisms which shows the external fertilization. So in that the formation of zygote occurs outside the body. Clear? That means this zygote is formed outside the body. Those organisms in which internal fertilization occurs, like for an example, fungi or bryophytes, or you can say pteridophytes, gymnosperm, angiosperm. These are the organisms where the internal fertilization occurs. So in these organisms, the zygote formation occurs inside the body. Clear? So ultimately, whatever the living organism who reproduces sexually, the event is there is a formation of a zygote. That process occurs, zygote formation. So you can say that this is an essential process, or it is a vital step in a sexual reproduction, or it is a main connecting link in a sexual reproduction. Without zygote formation, the further development of a living organism does not take place, and ultimately reproduction process does not proceed. Okay? So this is a zygote formation. Just the difference is that whether the zygote is formed outside a body or the zygote is formed inside a body. In which cases the zygote is formed outside a body? In the cases of organisms which reproduces externally, or they have an external fertilization. And in which cases the zygote formation occurs inside body of a female parent. It occurs in the organism who shows internal fertilization. Clear? And these are the examples where the zygote formation occurs. Okay? So ultimately the zygote formation occurs. Now, once the zygote formation occurs, what happens? Now we have a formation of a zygote either externally or inside the body of a parent. Okay? Now what happens? Now the further development starts. This zygote starts to develop. But this further development, it depends on certain factors. It depends on the life cycle of organism, okay, and the second factor, that is the environment to which it is exposed. Okay, students. So once the zygote is formed, the further development of a living organism or the offspring, it depends on the two factors. First, life cycle of an organism, and the second one is the environment to which they are going to be exposed. Depends on that, the further development takes place. Like say a few examples. Like we discussed with a few examples. That further development. In different cases, different type of development takes place. Like take an example of fungi and algae. In fungi and algae, once the zygote development occurs, that means this 2N is formed. 2N, zygote development takes place. Either outside a body or inside a body, depends on the type. Usually in the algae, it occurs outside of a body, and in case of a fungi, it occurs inside a body, the zygote formation. Now, if it is a fungi and the algae, how the further development takes place? In case of this algae and the fungi, there is a development of thick wall around this zygote. This thick wall around the zygote which is going to be developed, that protect this zygote against desiccation they provide protection against the damage. Okay, so they protect or prevent a desiccation of this, and it provides a protection against environmental factors. And what happens after this one? They undergo a rest before germination process. So this is how the further development process occurs in case of algae and fungi. Again repeat, once the zygote is formed, in case of algae and fungi, they develop a thick wall surrounding them. This thick wall that protect this zygote against a desiccation and against the environmental factors. Now they undergo rest. After a rest, they germinate and the new offspring is going to be produced. This is what happens in the case of fungi and the algae. Clear? Now take another example. Those organisms who exhibit a haplontic life cycle. So those organisms in which haplontic life cycle, how the further development takes place. Here the zygote is formed. Now how the further development takes place? This zygote, they undergo a process called as meiosis. Clear? Once it's a meiosis, you know that meiosis is a reductional cell division in which a number of chromosomes gets half compared to a parent. So here in the parent, it's a 2n number of chromosomes. So the daughter cells which are going to be produced, it has half number of chromosomes, means n number of chromosomes, half than the parent number. Parent has 2n, so here they have an n number of chromosomes, and it's a meiosis process. So how many offsprings are produced from a zygote? 4 offsprings are going to be produced. So in case of an organism who exhibit a haplontic life cycle, they undergo a meiosis and it form haploid spores. This haploid spore further undergo a development and they form, this is a development, they becomes a growth and haploid individuals are going to be produced. Clear? So that happens in the case of haplontic life cycle. Ultimately, I want to say that once the zygote formation occurs, the further development, it depends on 2 factors. First, that is the life cycle of an organism, like such kind of a organism, they do like this one. Even those organisms who has a diplontic life cycle, they do some other way. Those organisms who exhibit a haplodiplontic life cycle, they do in another way. What we have already learned in the 11th science. Even in algae and the fungi, what we have seen, the environment to which they are exposed, that means they leads to a formation of a wall surrounding to them, a thick wall, which protect them against a desiccation and the environmental factors. Then they undergo rest and then they germinate. So ultimate thing, the formation of a zygote occurs, then the development occurs, and that development depends on 2 factors. The life cycle of an organism and the second one, the environment to which it is exposed. So whatever the living organism it is, the zygote formation is the vital link. Okay? And every living organism, I have already told you in the 11th science, every living organism who reproduces sexually, they begin their life from a single cell. And this single cell, we are calling it as zygote. Remember, every living organism, they reproduces or who reproduces sexually, they begin their life from a single cell, and this single cell is called as zygote. Even the human being, the complex type of a living organism, even our life also starts from a single cell called as a zygote. Clear? So that's all about a first event in a post-fertilization, that is zygote formation. Okay? Any doubt? Now let's start with the second event of post-fertilization. This is the first event of post-fertilization. After fertilization, a zygote formation occurs. Okay? Either outside the body of a parent cell or inside the body of a parent cell. Now once the zygote develops, okay, then they undergo development and then it leads to a next process is going to start, and this process is called as embryogenesis. As we have seen the meaning of this is embryogenesis, it's made up of two words, embryo and genesis. Like what we have already done in the cases of gametogenesis. Gametogenesis. Genesis means formation. Gameto means a gamete, means a process of formation of gamete is called as gametogenesis. Similarly, embryogenesis, it's also made up of two terms, embryo and genesis. I hope now you already know the meaning of genesis. Genesis means formation. Formation of what? Embryo. This process is called as embryogenesis. Now the zygote which is developed or the zygote which is going to be formed, it converts into embryo. And the process of conversion of zygote to an embryo, this process is called as embryogenesis. Clear, students? So what is an embryogenesis? Embryogenesis, it's a word, it's made up of two words or it's a fusion of two words, genesis and embryo. Genesis means formation. Formation of embryo is called as embryogenesis. From whom the embryo is going to be formed? The embryo is going to be formed from a zygote. Okay, so the formation of embryo from a zygote, the process is called as embryogenesis. Okay, now this embryogenesis, it involves two steps. Embryogenesis involves two processes. First is cell division, and the second one is cell differentiation. Okay, so the embryogenesis involves how many processes? Two, cell division and cell differentiation. So let's see how the process occurs. Now you know that embryo formation occurs from a zygote. This is a zygote. Now first process occurs is the cell division. The name itself suggests the cell divides. The cell divides by a mitosis process and it forms two cells, two daughter cells are produced. Okay, or they divide by a meiosis process and 4 haploid daughter cells are going to be produced, whatever it may be. Clear, whether it's a mitosis or meiosis. But cell division starts. And when the cell division starts, the number of cells which are going to be produced, they are increasing. Okay, so what is the aim of this cell division? The cell division that increases the number of cells, because by division the new cells are added, and these new cells which are going to be added, that increases the number of cells. So that is the first process. By cell division, the number of cells gets increased. Once the cell gets increased, the number of cells gets increased, another process starts, what we call as cell differentiation. So what is the differentiation? The new cells which are going to be start, they undergo some modification, or they become mature, or they convert into specialized cells to form tissues, organs, and ultimately a new living organism is going to be produced. This is called as cell differentiation. Means a process in which the new cells which are going to be produced, they undergo a modification, development or maturation to form a new offspring. That process is called as cell differentiation. Clear, students? So embryogenesis involves two processes, cell division and the second one is cell differentiation. Cell division that increases the number of cells and cell differentiation that leads to a maturation of a cell. Okay, so these are the two processes which are going to occur. Now let's discuss how this process occurs, a process of embryo formation, how this process occurs in different types of living organisms. We have two varieties of living organism. The first variety of organism is called as oviparous, and the second variety of organism, they are called as viviparous organism. Clear? We have two varieties of organism, oviparous and viviparous. Before the embryo formation, there is already formation of a zygote. Either they occur externally or it occurs internally. Okay? Now, the zygote which is going to be formed, where they develop, depends on that. The zygote which is developed in a post-fertilization or the fertilization events, where it develops, based on that there are two types of a living organism. If this development of a zygote that occurs outside a body, then this type of living organisms are called as oviparous animals. And if there is a development of a zygote that occurs inside a body, this is called as viviparous organism, or in other term, okay, more specifically if I want to say that, where it is going to be formed, if there is a formation of embryo, remember a word, it's embryogenesis. So if there is a formation of an embryo outside a body of a female parent, then such kind of organisms are called as oviparous organism. If development of embryo it occurs inside a body of a living organism or in a female parent body, because the development of embryo occurs in a female parent body, such kind of organisms are called as viviparous organisms. Clear? The oviparous animal, okay, or oviparous organism, now we know that the development of embryo occurs outside a body. Clear? Whereas in viviparous organism it occurs inside body of female parent. This oviparous animal, they gives eggs. See, in eggs the development of embryo occurs outside a body. So that's why what we call it as oviparous animals. Okay? Either they give fertilized egg or they give unfertilized egg. Clear? So the oviparous animals they give the eggs, and viviparous animals they give a birth to a young one. They give a birth. Clear? Or they undergo a delivery, and the delivery that leads to a production of a young one. They are considered as viviparous animals like the human being. Okay? So those animals or those organisms in which the development of embryo occurs outside a body, they are called as oviparous. They lay down egg or they give eggs, either fertilized egg or the unfertilized egg. Okay? And in viviparous animals, the development of embryo occurs inside a body of female parent and they give a birth to a young one. Okay? Now let's discuss what happens to these eggs. Now we know that oviparous animals they give eggs. But this fertilized egg, they undergo incubation, certain period of incubation. And from that, after a certain period of incubation, the living organism or the young one, they get hatch out from it. Clear? They undergo this eggs, these eggs undergo incubation. After incubation, from the egg, the young one gets hatch out. Clear? Like you see in the case of a bird gives an egg. Okay? Then these eggs, they are kept in a safe environmental places. Okay? They are safe, they are kept by their parent in a safe place. These eggs, they undergo incubation. And after a certain period of a time, from that a new young one gets hatch out. Okay? Clear? It breaks the egg and that is going to be hatch out. That happens in the case of oviparous animal. In the case of viviparous animal, now we know that they gives a birth to a young one. How it happens? So here in viviparous animal, the development occurs inside the body of a female parent. Now they will be given a proper embryonic care and they will be given a protection because it's present in the female parent body, inside a female parent body. So they will be given a proper embryonic care and they will be protected. And after a certain growth or certain time of a growth, the delivery of young one takes place. This is what happens in case of viviparous animals. Clear? So how the further development of embryo takes place? In oviparous animal, they give eggs. The eggs undergo incubation. From this incubation, the young one gets hatched out. Okay? Whereas in viviparous animal, the embryo formation occurs inside the body of female parent. That is given to a proper care and protection is given to it because it is inside the female parent body. And after a certain period of a growth, like in case of human being, after 9 months, a delivery of a baby or delivery of a young one takes place. That is called as viviparous animal. Okay? Now, which is better, oviparous or viviparous, in which there is a more chances of a safety? So in case of a oviparous, you know that they are or they give eggs, and these eggs are covered by cancerous cells. Eggs, they are protected by cancerous cells. But this cancerous cell, no doubt, the parent try to keep it at a safe place, but it is also vulnerable to predators. It might get broken off, or someone might eat it. So the embryo which is going to be formed, it may get destroyed or it may get damaged. So it has those organisms who lays down eggs, or those organisms who are oviparous animals. They lay down eggs and they are protected by a covering, hard covering, cancerous shells. But here there is a less chances of a safety or protection of an embryo. But in case of a viviparous organism, here the embryo is formed inside the body of a female parent. Okay, and as it is present inside the body of a female parent, there is more chances of a safety because it is already present in the parent body, and the chances of care and chances of protection is too much high. So the chances of survival of viviparous organism is higher as compared to a oviparous organism. Clear, students? So this is how the embryogenesis occurs in case of animals. In case of animals, means the development of embryo occurs in animals. Depends on the type of organism, or depends on where the embryo gets developed, oviparous and the viviparous. Now let's discuss example of plants or flowering plants. Angiosperm. In plants, how the development of embryo takes place. In a flowering plant, how the embryo development takes place. Like suppose, for an example, this is a flower. I am drawing a bisexual flower. You know the meaning of bisexual flower. Bisexual flower, that means it possesses both reproductive organ, a male reproductive organ as well as a female reproductive organ. This is a male reproductive organ. What we call it as stamen. And this is female reproductive organ, what we call it as carpel, or you can also call it as pistil. Okay, so here it's a bisexual flower. This is a bisexual flower. Whether it's a bisexual or unisexual flower, the process occurs same. Just the difference is where these reproductive organs are present. In unisexual flower, the stamen, that's a male reproductive organ, and the pistil, they are present in different flower. In a bisexual flower, they are present in the same flower. But this is easy to understand, so that's why I am showing you. This is as an example. This is in a bisexual flower. Now what happens? Once the fertilization takes place, how the fertilization occurs? The pollen grain which is present in the anther, it falls on stigma. Okay. Then from this stigma, this gamete is going to be transferred by development of pollen tube. I am just enlarging this part over here. See how this process occurs. Enlarging this part. This is a carpel or pistil. These are the different parts. Once the pollen grain falls over here, okay, there is a development of a pollen tube. This is a pollen tube. It contains ovary. Ovary contains ovule. Okay, it also contains a female gamete. There is a development of a pollen tube. It enters into a ovary. It contains male gametes. These male gametes are going to be transported. Goes down. So what happens once it enters? The gametes gets fused and it leads to a formation of zygote. Male gamete and this female gamete that fuse together form a zygote. What we will also discuss in next chapter how this process occurs. Zygote. From this zygote, what is developed? The embryo will develop. But once the fertilization takes place, the other organs like this stamen, stamen, sepal, petal, they all get a shade off. Only what is remained? This is a carpel or pistil that is only going to be remained. All other thing gets a shade off. So now only this thing gets remained off. And two gametes fused together leads to a formation of zygote. And after zygote formation, this stamens, sepals and petals, they gets a shed off. Now what happens? The other structure also gets fertilized simultaneously. And what happens? The female zygote develops into embryo, ovary develops into fruit. Clear? This is the ovary develop into a fruit. And the last one, ovule. The ovule develop into a seed. Clear? Remember, zygote which is formed in the fertilization, you know that how zygote formed? By fusion of male and female gamete. This zygote develops into embryo. Ovary develops into fruit. And ovule develops into a seed. This is very important because we will discuss the process in detail in the next chapter, chapter number 2, sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Okay, but you have to remember just now, we will elaborate that process in the next chapter. But you have to remember, zygote develops into embryo, ovary develops into fruit, and ovule develops into a seed. This is what process happens in a flowering plant. Now once the fruit is developed, now you know that fruit is developed from ovary. There is a formation of a hard layer around the fruit, that what we call it as pericarp. Okay, that fruit that is going to be dispersed, or that leads to a dispersion of a seed, and that seed, you know that fruit contains a seed, the seed that is formed from ovule. That seed, from that seed, whole new plant can be developed. Clear? And thus the reproduction occurs in flowering plants. Okay. Again repeat, how the flowering plant, the reproduction occurs. Once the fertilization takes place, fertilization leads to a formation of zygote by fusion of male and female gamete. Once the fertilization takes place, sepal, petal, stamen, they all get shed off. Only what is remain? Carpel or pistil gets remained. Okay. Zygote which is formed at the end of fertilization, they leads or converts into an embryo. Ovary converts into a fruit. Ovule converts into a seed. Once the fruit is formed, there is a formation of a hard layer surrounding to it, what we call it as pericarp. Okay. Inside the fruit there is a presence of seed. That seed gets dispersed, and from that seed, the seed gets germinated upon a favorable conditions, and that leads to a formation of a new plant, and thus the sexual reproduction occurs in a flowering plant. So that's all about the post-fertilization events, zygote formation and embryogenesis process. In a zygote formation, a formation of a zygote, and in embryogenesis, there is a formation of an embryo. Okay, students? So that's all about the end of a chapter. Chapter number 1, reproduction in organism. Okay, we have finished with events in sexual reproduction, that includes pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization events. Now, students, you have to read this chapter thoroughly. I am just discussing the most important points. Okay, or I'm just letting you know which are the most important points which you have to focus, and even they are important to an examination point of view. First, you have to do a definition of reproduction and lifespan. Second, you also have to remember the lifespan of different living organisms, that already you have done in the exercise. Next, you should know the difference between asexual and sexual reproduction. Next, you should know the examples of organism or plants which reproduces asexual. You also have to remember the examples of animals who reproduces asexual. You have to remember. You also should know what is vegetative propagation, what are the organs that involved in a vegetative propagation, who are runners, who are suckers, you can say who are stolons, or who use the offsets for a sexual reproduction vegetatively. Okay. You also should know the natural and the artificial methods of vegetative propagation. Like artificial method includes cutting, layering, and grafting. Okay. Next, you should know what are the basic characteristics of sexual reproduction. Okay. Next, haploid parent produces the haploid gamete by a mitosis process. Diploid parent produces the haploid gametes by a meiosis process. Okay. Next, there are two exceptional plants which flowers only a specific durations. Like there is a one plant, bamboo species, who flower only once in their lifetime, usually after 50 to 100 years of their life, and they give a lots of fruit and then they die. Okay. there is another example where the unusual flowering can be seen. It is Strobilenthus kunthiana, commonly what we call it as Nilkuranji. In this plant, the flowering occurs at every 12 years. Okay, and this is a plant which is usually found in Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, hilly areas of these states. This plant is usually found in the southern India. Okay. Next, you should also know the example of a plant, water hyacinth, which is also commonly called as Star of Bengal. This is a weed that is brought over here for its beautiful flower and the shape of a leaf, but now it is reproducing vegetatively in a so fast manner that it is draining all the oxygen from a water body, and that is causing a threat to a living organism or the fishes who are already living into a water, because it takes out the oxygen from a water. So there is no oxygen or very few oxygen remains in the water. Okay, and so that's why the living organism who lives in a water, they get less oxygen, and there is a difficulty for their survival. You have to remember these are the most important examples. You should know gametogenesis, gamete transfer, fertilization, zygote formation, and embryogenesis process, because they are important. Okay, so here we end with chapter number 1. It is reproduction in organism. In a next session, we will start with chapter number 2. It is sexual reproduction in flowering plant. Now we will more focus on sexual reproduction, because most of the higher order of organism, they follow sexual reproduction. So in chapter number 2 we will discuss the sexual reproduction in flowering plants, that means plants, and in the chapter number 3 we will discuss the sexual reproduction in humans. Okay, so from next session onwards we will start with the chapter number 2, sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Okay, so thank you for watching. Stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you. Subscribe this channel. Thank you.